When asked about an unusual family tradition, one contestant revealed a secret so bizarre, it left Steve Harvey gasping for breath. How could a simple answer ignite laughter in the studio and spark a viral uproar? The truth behind this hilarious moment will change the way you see family feuds forever. In a brightly lit studio filled with cheers and laughter, viewers settled in for a classic episode of Family Feud, where families clash in the light-hearted battlefield of survey questions. This week's contestants were the Johnsons, a boisterous family from a small suburb of Ohio, known for their unique quirks and loud personalities. At the helm was Marcus Johnson, a jovial father with a flair for theatrics. His big, magnetic smile was only overshadowed by the sheer enthusiasm he brought to the game. He was accompanied by his three lively siblings, Tina, the quick-witted younger sister, Paul, the sometimes serious older brother, and Aunt Betty, the family's unofficial historian. Betty had endless stories about family traditions, yet her wit often made them entertainingly absurd. As the round began, they were ready to bring their A-game, but no one could predict the answer that would leave Steve Harvey rolling with laughter. During the first question, the host asked, "What is a family tradition you would never expect?" The team buzzed in, and before anyone knew it, Marcus leaned forward, confidence radiating from him. "We have a ritual where we dress up as our favorite cartoon characters every Sunday for dinner," he announced boldly, images of the family in mismatched costumes flashing through the audience's mind. There was an anticipatory hush before the studio erupted into a chorus of laughter, Steve's voice rising above the others. "You're kidding me!" The Johnsons laughed along, but it was Aunt Betty's turn that took it to the next level. In an unexpected moment of inspiration, she exclaimed, "And we serve spaghetti on the roof to honor our great-grandfather, who thought he could fly." The room fell silent for just a moment, and then pandemonium broke loose. Steve Harvey doubled over, clutching his stomach, gasping between laughter. "Spaghetti on the roof, does he think he's a bird?" The crowd roared as viewers at home replayed the moment in disbelief. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your comment. And there's something very important. Click the hype button. This helps a lot to deliver this content to more people. It's quick, but it makes all the difference. The laughter in the studio seemed endless, but for Marcus the hilarity sparked a deeper realization. Growing up, his family always embraced the absurd, using humor to bond and alleviate life's pressures. However, he had started to feel an invisible rift grow between him and his siblings as they transitioned into adulthood, increasingly prioritizing work and responsibilities over their cherished traditions. This moment exemplified the spirit of connection he feared was fading. As the game continued, the Johnsons wound their way through each round, the laughter blending with moments of genuine competition. But beneath the surface fun, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a game. It was a wake-up call. The atmosphere around them was vibrant, yet he sensed the urgency to rekindle the family's spirit. The episode took a dramatic turn when a sudden question asked, "What do families do to stay close?" The siblings' answers were good, but predictable. Yet, there was something nagging at Marcus. He finally spoke up. "We need to keep our traditions alive, not just on television, but in our daily lives." In a studio that felt both entertaining and reflective, his voice cut through the humor, and the audience shifted. Curiosity replaced laughter. His siblings fell silent, one by one, processing what he had said. They exchanged glances, their faces mirroring regret mixed with determination. Aunt Betty nodded, a knowing light in her eyes. Could this light-hearted moment give them the motivation to once again prioritize family? Perhaps even resume their rooftop spaghetti dinners? With this revelation simmering in the air, the Johnsons prepared themselves for the next round, determined to not just win the game, but to win back their family spirit that they had taken for granted. They were ignited, ready to embrace the chaos, laughter, and love that came with being together. As the studio lights dimmed momentarily, the atmosphere buzzed with a mix of anxious excitement. The game show's format had always been about fun, but today felt charged with a deeper pulse. Marcus looked at his family, their faces lit by the vibrant stage lights, and felt a renewed sense of purpose arise within him. They had come to play, but now it seemed they had come for something more significant, a way to reclaim their family bond, one laugh at a time. As they transitioned into the next round, the host, Steve Harvey, leaned in closer to the contestants. "All right, y'all, here's the next question." His voice boomed with an infectious energy. "Name something that you might find in your grandma's kitchen." The Johnsons buzzed like a beehive, brainstorming answers. Marcus's older sister, Jenna, offered cookies, while his younger brother, Kevin, chimed in with spices. Each answer was met with nods and chuckles, the studio audience echoing their laughter. Their responses were good-natured and on point, but Marcus felt compelled to break the mold. He raised his hand, a determined glint in his eye. "What about," he hesitated, the memory flooding back, "a jello mold shaped like a fish?" His family erupted in laughter, a chorus of joy that echoed against the studio walls. Steve's eyes widened in disbelief. "A jello mold? That's a new one." He doubled over, genuine laughter spilling from him. But Marcus didn't stop there. He knew his family had a treasure trove of quirky traditions that deserved attention. "Grandma used to make all sorts of crazy things. Remember those green pancakes for St. Patrick's Day?" he asked, a grin spreading across his face. This sparked a wave of fond memories among the Johnsons, each sharing their own hilarious anecdotes of festive dishes that had graced their table over the years. Aunt Betty, especially, was a maestro of bizarre culinary experiments. "And who can forget the turkey-shaped cake for Thanksgiving?" she added, her eyes twinkling with mirth. The audience roared with laughter, and even the other contestants couldn't hold back their smiles. The atmosphere transformed, becoming less about competition and more about community, where family quirks became treasures rather than embarrassments. Here, in this lively studio, Marcus realized how these shared moments weren't just about winning a game. They were about reconnecting with their roots, weaving the fabric of their family history into the present. Despite the levity in the air, Marcus still felt the weight of his earlier revelation pressing on him. As the game progressed, he watched his siblings, enjoying their competitive banter, but the urgency nagged at him. They had to take back the essence of family fun, the traditions that had begun to fade in the background of their busy lives. Determined, Marcus leaned over to Kevin, who was furrowing his brow, deciding on the next answer. "Hey, remember our rooftop dinners?" Marcus whispered. "We might want to make that happen again." Kevin's eyes lit up, and he nodded vigorously, a spark igniting in his mind. The next question was posed by Steve. "Name a game you play at family gatherings." Answers flew in rapid succession. "Charades!" shouted Jenna. "Board games!" from Kevin. But Marcus's heart raced with a bolder suggestion. "How about a family trivia game about our weird traditions?" The laughter turned into thoughtful nods. The realization struck them. Though they laughed often, they hadn't taken stock of what made their family unique. They had become like a comedy troupe, performing for moments of laughter without understanding the roots of that humor. As the round concluded, Steve turned to the audience, a sly grin on his face. "This family's onto something. You can just feel the love and the laughter. They're not just here to win, they're here to remember." The audience erupted in applause, and in that instant, the Johnsons knew they were on the cusp of something new and beautiful. In the chaos of family banter and jovial teasing, Marcus felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Their connection began to strengthen, with laughter threading through each interaction, hinting at the deeper meaning of family existence. Reinvigorated, Marcus leaned back in his seat, smiling at the chaos surrounding him, ready to fight for a future filled with traditions that brought them together. As they prepared for the next question, which promised to bring more laughter and memories, he couldn't help but feel that today was more than just a game show. It was a pivotal moment in reconnecting with the heart of what it meant to be a Johnson. The air in the studio buzzed with a fresh energy as the Johnson family gathered around the stage for the next question. Marcus, still feeling the warmth of camaraderie from their earlier revelations, could sense the audience's anticipation. Laughter had brought them closer, yet an unease suddenly crept into his mind. Would the subsequent questions peel back layers of family secrets better left undiscussed? As Steve Harvey's booming voice echoed through the set, the team focused intently on him. "All right, next question. Name something you might find in your neighbor's yard that would embarrass you if they saw you taking it." His eyebrows danced playfully, and the crowd roared with laughter. Come on, guys, think. What do you suspect they're hiding? Marcus urged, recalling moments from their childhood. Maybe that old bicycle in Mr. Anderson's yard, or the strange garden gnome in Mrs. Flannery's. Old lawn flamingos, shouted Jenna, eliciting giggles from her siblings. Kevin followed quickly. A broken lawnmower. The banter took a wilder turn as Marcus suggested, how about a family of raccoons raiding their trash? This elicited an uproar of laughter, but also a glance from his sister, Maya. It was a running joke they had with their neighbor, but Marcus sensed that what was funny on the surface was laced with underlying tension, like so many moments in their family history. As Steve revealed the scoreboard, it became apparent that they weren't performing well. The other family had a commanding lead, and the pressure began to mount. Marcus could almost feel the weight of expectations as their laughter subsided. He noticed fiddling hands, stiffened shoulders, and sidelong glances. What started as a light-hearted game now held the potential to expose rifts that history had created. The next question loomed, and to everyone's surprise, it touched a nerve. Name a reason your neighbor might be evicted. Silence descended over them, a stark contrast to the mirth from earlier. All eyes turned to Marcus for an answer, and he felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He stammered, memories of old feuds flooding his mind. The Johnsons had lived next to the Andersons for decades, but hadn't always gotten along. The disputes over fences, noise, and even garden hedges had made for years of bitter tension. Suddenly answering felt like a betrayal, a reveal of family history that they had swept under the rug. Marcus, come on, just say something, Jenna pressed, nudging him. Their dog barks too much, he finally suggested, his voice trembling slightly. The laughter that followed seemed to mask the tension, but Marcus knew better. He could feel the criticism brewing. The studio audience roared, but it felt like the moment blurred between laughs and an echo of judgment. As Steve laughed heartily, Marcus caught a glimpse of Maya. Disappointment flickered in her eyes. It was a reminder that while they were cracking jokes, their past was still very much alive, lurking just beneath the surface. Let's keep it light, folks, Steve called out. But Marcus didn't feel light-hearted. He was reminded that their laughter was sometimes a facade, a way to dodge the deeper fractures within their family. As they moved into the subsequent questions, each answer dredged up more uncomfortable moments, and the rifts felt increasingly visible. The Johnsons' laughter became nervous, tinged with the knowledge that unresolved issues festered beneath the surface. They were not just battling for points anymore, they were battling the memories of old grievances, competing with not only the other family, but also with themselves. The game show that had promised joyful chaos was morphing into something heavier, an unexpected reflection of family dynamics. Marcus could feel the pressure mounting, and he knew the laughter, though infectious, was a temporary balm for the wounds that needed healing. The journey ahead was becoming clearer, to face not just the game but the truth of their family history and the hidden stories that had shaped them, for better or worse. As they prepared for the final round, a realization struck Marcus. Winning was not the only goal. Perhaps the greatest victory would be reclaiming the lost joy of their family gatherings, creating new traditions, and ultimately breaking the cycle of feuding that had held them back for so long. As the last question flashed on the screen, Marcus felt a surge of determination. The light-hearted banter that had flowed so easily began to fade. The laughter hung in the air like a heavy cloud, masking something deeper that had yet to be addressed. He looked around at his family, whose faces glowed from the bright studio lights, but held shadows of uncertainty. "All right, folks," Steve announced, his voice ringing out cheerfully, trying to uplift the atmosphere. "This is the final round. Remember, all that matters is family." But for Marcus, the stakes felt different now. Winning or losing seemed less important than facing the truth that was simmering beneath the surface. As the final question was read aloud, Marcus could sense the tension straining his family's smiles. "Name something you can't resist doing at a family gathering," Steve prompted, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. The audience leaned forward, their excitement palpable. Marcus felt his heart racing. This was it, the moment that would either bridge their gaps or widen them further. His cousin Tanya was first to answer. "Eating too much," she said, laughter spilling from her lips. The audience erupted in cheers, and for a fleeting moment the joy seemed real. But Marcus noticed the glances exchanged among them. His uncle's chuckle was forced, his aunt's smile was hesitant, and the laughter felt hollow. Next up was his brother Jamal, who blurted out, "Bickering!" The crowd roared with laughter, and for the first time, Steve paused, doubling over with laughter. "Now that's a good one," he wheezed, wiping tears from his eyes. The moment was amusing, but it struck Marcus as a little too close to home. He could hear his mother's voice echoing in his head, warning of their family's reputation for never being able to get along. His heart raced with the recognition that they were laughing, but perhaps not for the right reasons. The answers flowed in a blur: dancing, drinking. And yet, as the final response approached, a silence descended, almost like a pensive fog. Marcus felt the weight of his family's unresolved conflicts pressing against him, reminding him of old arguments, unspoken grievances, and long-held grudges. Then it hit him, like a bolt of lightning revealing an uncharted path. It wasn't about resisting those things, but confronting them. The last chance for an answer loomed, and something inside him urged him to take the leap. He stepped forward, his voice steady, telling stories. The studio fell quiet, anticipation hanging in the air. Steve's expression shifted from amusement to mild surprise. Stories? Now that's a unique one. You think family gatherings are all about stories? Yes, Marcus replied, feeling a rush of courage and vulnerability. But real stories, the ones we often avoid talking about. Our traditions. What brought us here, the good and the bad. It's more than just fun, it shapes us. In that moment, silence transformed into gasps, then a collective murmur spread amongst his family. Suddenly, the laughter that had been a shield now felt like a fragile barrier, one that was about to crumble. Steve stared at Marcus, processing the depth of his answer, and slowly, a smile formed. Now that's the heart of family, right there. Marcus knew he had crossed a threshold. He had decided not to shy away from the weight of their history, but to embrace it, to turn their laughter into a vehicle for healing. As Steve surveyed the crowd, he caught sight of the flicker of understanding igniting in his family's eyes, and he realized this game show was no longer just about competition. The atmosphere shifted, families gathered, memories surfaced, and the connection felt less like a series of checkpoints and more like a shared journey. The laughter began to feel more genuine, a mixture of realizations, as families began to reflect on their stories over each quirk. Marcus knew they were entering uncharted territory, but he felt ready. They were no longer just a team fighting to win, but a family aching to heal. As they prepared for the concluding moments of the game, Marcus breathed deeply, ready to face the truths that would change everything. The journey to uncover those buried stories was just beginning, but they were no longer alone. They were in this together, woven into the emotional fabric of their family legacy. As the laughter in the studio grew louder, buoyed by the emotional revelation Marcus had just shared, he felt an unfamiliar sense of calm settle over him. It was as if, in that moment, all the years of competition and rivalry were stripped away, leaving only the raw essence of family. He looked around at his relatives, who had once seemed like strangers, and saw a different light in their eyes. They were no longer just competitors. They were a tapestry of stories waiting to be woven together. Steve Harvey sensed the shift in the room, the atmosphere electrified with unspoken truths and unresolved feelings. He leaned into the mic, a glimmer of mischief in his eyes. "All right, folks, let's move on. But first, let's give Marcus a round of applause for bringing some real family vibes tonight." The audience erupted in applause, and for a moment Marcus basked in their acknowledgement. He felt like he stood on the edge of a precipice, looking down into a deep chasm filled with both fear and excitement. Yet just as the applause faded, Marcus felt the weight of expectation bearing down on him once more. The next round was a pivotal one. He could sense the rising tension among his family members. Would they embrace this emotional journey, or retreat back into their shells? The game was far from over, but for the first time, he found himself second-guessing the importance of winning. Suddenly, the buzzer rang, and it was time for his family to face off against their rivals. This time, the questions felt different. They were no longer simply trivial pursuits, but reflective prompts that demanded genuine responses. Name something you do to keep family traditions alive, the host announced, and Marcus could feel the familiar competitive fire reigniting in the room. As his family members tackled the question, each turn in the game became an opportunity for more laughter, more stories, and more connection. Aunt Lily shared how every Thanksgiving they would dress the turkey as a family member, complete with outfits and funny names. Marcus chuckled, picturing his uncle dressed as a turkey, but the laughter also served as a gateway. And sometimes, Aunt Lily added, we'd forget and just call it Turkey Bob, like it was a family member. But with every joke, Marcus could sense a tightening knot in his stomach. The stakes felt higher, and as the game progressed, he found himself caught in the crossfire of contrasting emotions. He dreaded that the humor might mask deeper family fractures that still needed to be addressed. What if, amid the laughter, they missed the true essence of what it meant to be a family? His mind shifted toward the next question, one that filled him with trepidation. Name a family secret that everyone knows. This was it, the pivotal moment. Would they be brave enough to lay bare their secrets? Would they yield to humor, or dig deeper into the buried truths that had long haunted them? Someone here has got to tell about the time Marcus stole my bike, shouted his cousin Jason, breaking the uneasy silence. A wave of laughter ensued, but it momentarily stole Marcus's breath. Each joke was a reminder of his past mistakes, the petty jealousies that had festered instead of healing. He had thought that laughter could banish all that hurt, but he began to question if the humor was enough to cover the cracks in their relationships. As the whispers and chuckles echoed around him, Marcus felt an overwhelming urge to steer the conversation back to the moment of bonding they had experienced earlier. But how could he do that, when laughter had become a shield against true vulnerability? It was then that he realized the power of family meant more than just sharing laughter. It was about having the courage to face the ugly truths too. He took a deep breath and prepared to face the music. "All right, let's be real," he finally said, with the conviction he hadn't felt before. "We've all shared some laughs, but we know we've got secrets we need to unpack. Secrets that created distance among us. Let's talk about it." The studio fell silent, the laughter replaced by a palpable tension that left everyone on edge. Marcus's heart raced, but he couldn't back down now. He was ready to embrace the discomfort. He looked at Steve, who nodded in support, signaling that maybe this was exactly what the game and their family needed most. The silence that fell over the studio was deafening, a stark contrast to the previous moments of raucous laughter. Marcus felt the weight of his family's gaze upon him, each pair of eyes like a spotlight shining down, daring him to continue, pressing him to reveal the truths hidden beneath layers of humor. Steve stood close, his expression serious but encouraging, signifying that this was the right path, a necessary conversation for healing. "So who wants to dive in first?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the nerves bubbling within. The atmosphere hung heavy, like the looming threat of a storm. It would take bravery to confront the darker truths that had lingered too long in the background of their lives. Hesitation echoed in the room, until suddenly it was Jason again who broke the tension. "Okay, fine. I'll go," Jason started, his tone a mix of reluctance and resolve. "Let's talk about Dad's birthday last year. You remember how we all promised to show up and then half of us bailed?" His voice cracked slightly, exposing the vulnerability he masked with humor. I felt terrible. There was a part of me that just wanted to avoid our family drama. Rolling his eyes, Marcus felt the air shift as the laughter transformed into serious acknowledgement. "Because we never learned to be honest with each other," he replied, his own heart racing. "We've let petty feuds and grudges come between us." The quirk of his lips that typically signaled a joke faded away, replaced by an earnestness that stunned the audience. They had always been so good at avoiding confrontation, using laughter as a buffer against uncomfortable truths. Yet, in this moment, every family member was leaning forward, captivated by the authenticity in Marcus's voice. "Let's face it," Jason continued, emboldened by the shift. "I have been angry at you for years, Marcus. I thought you'd never change after that whole bike incident." Laughter erupted from the audience again, but this time it felt different, tinged with acceptance rather than mockery. "Yeah, but did I ever apologize?" Marcus replied, raising an eyebrow. "No, I just laughed it off and let it fester. I think it's time to put things on the table," an older cousin piped in. "We can't just shove our issues under the rug anymore." As names were called out, unresolved disputes began surfacing one by one, like a string of dominoes set to fall. Each revelation sent ripples of shock and laughter through the studio, but these weren't the usual laughs. They were laced with raw honesty. "Remember when Aunt Linda thought nobody could see her diving for the last piece of cake? That was legendary." Marcus snorted, the crowd gasping in surprise at the honesty. But she was doing it because she felt like she never got a slice of happiness. The laughter mixed with embarrassment, revealing how each family member had long hidden their struggles behind humor. Old family rivalries and misunderstandings were finally put under a microscope, and the air filled with the revelation that perhaps their feuds were not as amusing as they once thought. Steve stepped in, his commanding presence cutting through the tension. "You all are doing great," he encouraged, as he leaned in closer, engaging with the family. "This is the healing part of any family feud. When you start to reveal your fears and pain, you break down those walls." The moment felt surreal, like a family therapy session gone live on television. There were gasps, laughter, and even tears as memories unfolded, each family member learning to see past the masks they'd so long worn. Everyone in the audience, including Marcus, began to understand that it wasn't about winning a game or cracking a joke. It was about rebuilding their connections. "I guess we've grown too comfortable laughing it off," Marcus admitted quietly, his heart pounding in the silence afterward. "It's time we learned to laugh with each other, not at each other." As his words hung in the air, a wave of emotional energy surged through the studio. Faces softened, and nods of agreement reverberated within the familial circle. They had crossed a threshold together, a collective decision to turn their family feud into a family reconciliation. And as words of understanding and empathy filled the room, Marcus felt a transformation take place, not just within himself, but throughout the entire family. As the applause slowly faded and the emotional energy hung thick in the air, Marcus looked around at his family. The studio lights reflected a newfound clarity in their expressions, and a tension that had once been a fixture in their interactions seemed to dissipate. With Steve Harvey encouraging their candidness, the realization that they could shift from laughter at each other to laughter with one another was palpable. The show continued, with Steve steering the conversation toward lighter topics, but the tone had shifted dramatically. "All right, let's dive back in. We've got some fun questions lined up. Here's another one. What's something you wouldn't do for $1 million? Steve grinned, eyeing the family, ready to spark yet another round of laughter. The answers came flying in. "I wouldn't dress up like a chicken," chimed in Aunt Lisa, her laugh filling the studio. The crowd responded with chuckles, the tension from earlier now just a memory. Next, Cousin Johnny piped up, "I wouldn't eat a bug. I mean, $1 million can't buy me that kind of gross." His comment broke into a round of laughter, and suddenly the family was engaged in a spirited banter, encouraging each other with playful nudges and comical responses. As the game progressed, the humorous answers reflected not only their personalities, but also their evolving relationship. They joked about Uncle Pete's infamous cooking skills, generating an uproar when he playfully defended his reputation. This lively atmosphere contrasted sharply with the skepticism they had shown only moments ago. In this light, laughter became a bridge instead of a barrier. However, as the show neared its end, Steve could sense that there was still much more to unpack. He addressed the family directly. "You all have made this a memorable episode, not only for us here but for families watching at home. Remember, a good laugh can heal wounds, but it's also important to stand by each other when times get tough. Who's ready for one last question?" Marcus could feel tension rising again, unsure of what would come next. Yet, they were ready to face it together. "All right, let's end on a high note," Steve continued. "What's a family saying or motto that you cherish?" The room paused, and there was silence for a moment. Suddenly, Grandma Marge, her eyes twinkling with wisdom, spoke up. "Our family motto is simple: support and love through all storms." That struck a chord deep within Marcus. It wasn't just a saying, it was a call to action. They had begun to heal, not just through laughter, but through love and understanding. They were not just a collection of individuals bonded by blood, but a family capable of kindness and support, ready to embrace each other through whatever life threw at them. The crowd erupted into applause, and Steve nodded appreciatively. "That's what Family Feud is all about, folks. Remember this moment." His voice rang out, embedding the atmosphere with warmth. As the show wrapped up, Marcus felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over him. The conflict that had once defined their gatherings was now transformed into the love that connected them. He realized that family feuds were not just about rivalry, they were an opportunity for connection, learning, and growth. Walking off the set, Marcus turned to his family, laughter still echoing around them. "You know, maybe we should have a family game night more often," he said, smiling. "Only if we can agree on a food delivery afterward," Aunt Lisa joked, nudging him playfully. As they left the studio, it was clear. They weren't just relatives anymore. They were a family united by laughter, support, and a deeper understanding of one another. Marcus smiled, knowing this was just the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. So what did you think of this story? Leave your comments, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share with your friends, and don't forget to like. But most importantly, click the hype button. Seriously, this is crucial for the channel to grow and bring more amazing stories like this to you. It only takes a second, but it helps a lot. See you next time.